How do you think about life habits that you want and getting them?
So this is an area that I've only really started working on in my life recently, proactively, and an area that Justin Kahn, my old co-founder, has influenced greatly and positively. Justin introduced me to this book called Atomic Habits, and it's basically a guide on how to develop good habits. And the book is tricky because it's clearly one of those things that would be better consumed as 5 blog posts as opposed to 200 pages. And so I actually found a great summary online.
Nice.
What was interesting was that I had used habit tracking apps before. I had set kind of habit goals before. But I was missing a couple key pieces that made things click. The first key piece that this book kind of created or introduced was the idea that, like, if you want to accomplish a goal, the most important part is not setting the goal. It's basically having a system to help you get that goal accomplished. And this only really started making sense to me after I had a kid, because suddenly you're running a household, and in order to run a household, you have to have systems. You have to have a system for making sure the house is clean. You have to have a system to making sure the baby's fed and you and your wife are fed. You have to kind of have systems, right? And by systems, it means like things that you can repeat and that get more efficient over time. And so, the author introduced this idea that, like, okay, like you need to have a system of having habits. And if you want to accomplish a goal, if you can create a system that you can easily repeat, it's a lot easier to get to that end goal. And so that was the first thing that got my mind prepped. The second thing that got my mind prepped was that no one ever gave me permission to have tiny goals. Like tiny habits. And this book kind of talked about tiny habits. And they were like, there are things that basically make habits easier to build, and one of them is to make them tiny. So
are these habits like the beginnings of forming larger habits, or also some things that are contained within themselves?
The funny thing is, I'm early on this journey, so I don't know. This is something that I've started in the last month. What I can tell you, though, was that it made starting to create habits, it brought down the intimidation level so much. So give you an example. As I've gotten older, my ability to sleep later has gone away. It's depressing. I used to be able to sleep super late. It was amazing. Now I wake up at 6 in the morning and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I have nothing on the calendar. And I got into this horrible habit of basically wasting time on my phone in the morning. And like, man, like 2 hours can fly when you're just doing stupid stuff on your phone. And so I wanted to kind of have a more productive morning. And what was great about kind of using this technique was that I set up some really simple habits that I wanted to have in the morning. So my morning habits now are, I want to do 5 minutes of productive reading that'll make me smarter, 5 minutes of work, most often email, 5 minutes of working out, which now is basically like switching between playing Oculus Quest games, which I love, and riding the Peloton, which I don't love as much, and weigh myself every morning. So those are the habits that I have in the morning. And what's interesting is that, like, 5 minutes, right? Like,
Kind of rounds down to 0.
yeah, exactly. Like anything can do anything for 5 minutes, right? Like even if you hate it, you can do it for 5 minutes. But what's happened is just like, it's this mental trick of like, who only does 5 minutes of email? That's like impossible. Like, especially for me, I have like infinite email always, right? So just triggering me to get into my email means that, bam, I'm going to get in my email. Ever since starting this habit, I've been able to like crunch email infinitely more effectively because I'm just getting a little bit done in the morning, and I have similar habits in the evening before bed. Reading. who only reads for 5 minutes? Right? Same thing, right? This has forced me to be more on the ball about what's content that I want to read, save it, and now I have this like time that I know I can get to it, which has created this great cycle. Workout, right? I have a gym membership. I have a gym in my building, but just the intimidation factor of like getting dressed, going downstairs, the whole shebang, right? Meant that like it was hard to keep that habit up. 5 minutes of working out, like one, you're not going to work out for 5 minutes. You work out for longer. But two, sometimes you just have 5 minutes. So you just work out for 5 minutes. But three, shit ain't that intimidating. And so having these small things was a huge leap for me. Another idea introduced in this book was like, make it your identity. Make this, if you want to develop new habits, like talk about it, make it part of you. And this is something Justin does so well. Like, you know, whenever he takes on something, everyone knows. He tweets about it, he talks about it every day. But one of the things that does is like it holds you accountable, right? Now people ask you about your habits. And if you're thinking like, oh, well, I didn't do any of my habits today, like, you know, it's like,
and that feels bad and it gets you to do it, right?
Yeah. So like, that's really important. You know, when you combine that with a habit tracker, it's really important because like you can develop streaks that you can become proud of. And, you know, the general theory is that if you do, it takes, 21 days to kind of develop a new habit. And, the tracker kind of helps you make sure you're doing that. There are other kind of points in the book, how do you make the things that you shouldn't do harder to do? How do you have group accountability? One of the tricks that Justin does is he has a WhatsApp group and everyone commits to working out 5 minutes a day. And everyone has to post in that group that they've done it. And if you don't post, you just feel horrible, right? And once again, it's only 5 minutes.
That's social pressure.
That's social pressure. And so what was cool was that like this book just gave me a framework of how to take control back of my life. And kind of in a world now with like social products that are basically engineered to suck time out of your life, for me, Twitter, YouTube, like just engineered to destroy my life. This kind of made me feel like I had power back. And it also reemphasized one of the things that I realized was like really important is that I often felt like people who are more effective than me were better than me, that there was something inside or there was some inherent quality about them that made them more effective. And like this book was really funny. He was just like, no, it's hard to do hard things. It's just some people have better systems and some people have better habits. And like, if you work hard to have better habits, you can just be more productive than other people. And so it's not that it's not hard, right? It's just that like, if you want to bench press your body weight, for example, like you don't go in every morning and try to bench press your body weight, right? You have a system over time, you get a little better. And if you have an effective system, you get there. And if you don't, you never do. And so it's been one of the most important things that I've done recently. And I'm now approaching 21-day streaks on a lot of my habits, and it's super rewarding. And so it's something that I like to share.